The early to mid 2010s was the era of the creepypasta. It was the era when so many internet horror stories took off in the mainstream. You couldn't escape them during this time period. There were so many creepypastas being made, and so many channels that got created and got their start just reading these creepypastas to the world.
Pokemon has been around for over 10 years and is known to be a lighthearted kids game. But there's always been something unsettling about the original versions.
Everyone was going crazy for these internet campfire stories. The peak of their popularity is long since gone, and now they're seen as another part of internet history. They defined an entire era, and being reminded of their existence makes a lot of people nostalgic for the fear they caused. And you can look back and reflect on them to see if they hold up today. But that's the thing. Just because they were popular for a good while, that doesn't mean every creepypasta was created equal. When looking back, you can definitely see some creepypastas are just complete dog shit these days and have aged like milk. In fact, I dare say 80% of all creepypastas are like this now. They're filled with cliches and just come off as corny and try hard. There are only a handful of creepypastas I'd call actually good pieces of writing, and with there being thousands upon thousands of them, that's saying a lot. I've mentioned in the past there's some I still enjoy and can look back on with positivity, but I'll be honest, it was a lot more enjoyable when you were a teen and didn't really look at them with a critical eye. Despite all this, however, there is one creepypasta that was constantly put on a pedestal, one that was put above all the rest and was considered the greatest creepypasta ever made. And that creepypasta was Ben Drowned. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is a very strange game. Tone-wise, there's a ton of very off-putting and disturbing things in it. And due to its tone, it's stuck in the minds of many who played it. There has been a lot of discussion about this game to this very day. Lots of stories and theories have been crafted about it, but one day, someone looked at the game and thought, what if I were to take this already tonally disturbing game and made it even more disturbing? It was a normal day on the X board on 4chan in 2010. Well, as normal as X can be. Have you seen the shit they post in there? A guy with the handle Jujusable would create a thread and would go into detail about his experience of moving to college and trying to get a copy of one of his favorite childhood games, Majora's Mask, when he happens to come across an old man at a garage sale and gives him a shady copy of it for free. Said copy was a blank cartridge with the word Majora written on it. He takes it back to his dorm, puts it in his console, and starts playing, only to be greeted by a file already being there named Ben, which he then deletes, and then things start to go wrong. The game starts to completely fall apart. Everything is now broken and out of place, and he's now getting stalked by this statue of Link. When he attempts to do the fourth day glitch from the original game, he's suddenly warped to a confrontation with the Skull Kid, and any attempts to defeat him end up with Link bursting into flames. The entire aura is, admittedly, very creepy. Like, yeah, even today watching this, the part where his game resets and there's a new file called Your Turn, and when he selects the file, it's just Link's corpse laying on the ground with a Skull Kid laughing over him. Yeah, that's honestly really unsettling. Eventually, Jujusable is lured underwater, where he finds the Link statue, and suddenly drowns. Then his game resets once more, and now you get the title drop. Ben Drowned. He would continue to play the game as it terrorized him, trying to find any way to get the nightmares and trauma the game was causing him to stop. But Jujusable made the biggest mistake of all. By capturing footage of the game and uploading it to the internet, he accidentally let the spirit onto the web, and now the spirit is free to roam on the internet wherever he pleases. Ben is now free to terrorize whoever he wants online, and you could be next. And that's Ben Drowned, an internet horror story that would have been forgotten had it not been for the videos. Most horror stories usually only use some pictures to show off how spooky they were, but Ben Drowned was different, as it had game footage, having all the events described by the author actually happen in motion, giving credibility to the story as if it were real, which was extremely rare at the time. No matter which way you splice it, for 2010, this is extremely well done. This story is one of the many reasons why creepypastas became a phenomenon in the early 2010s. People wanted to make stuff just like this. It was constantly lauded for its quality. It was never in your face with its horror. It was all subtlety and let you try and theorize things about it, or what most of it could even mean. It was always considered one of, if not, the scariest creepypasta ever made. Back then, it made the top of so many scariest creepypasta lists it isn't even funny.
Ben drowned.
Number 1 is Ben, the Haunted Majora's Mask copy.
And number 10, Ben Drowned. This story is about a supposedly haunted copy of the game The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask for the Nintendo 64.
Whenever creepypastas are mentioned, this story is constantly seen as one of the tentpoles of just how good the genre could be. It was basically the first haunted game creepypasta, which would later become its own genre that would be filled to the brim with cliches. Ben Drowned was the one who established those cliches, so you can't really give it too much shit for that. It was one of the few creepypastas to hit the mainstream. You all know that Gravity Falls episode where the visual novel girl falls in love with Seuss.
I don't think you know what you're saying, Seuss. No one loves you more than
Fucking hentai.
If you look at the concept art, look what was one of the inspirations for this episode. There was talks of there even being a Ben Drowned movie made by Clive Barker, but it never materialized, so probably for the best. And oh boy, once the teenage girls got a hold of him, you can guess what they did to him. The whole concept of him being anywhere on the internet, it went from, oh no, Ben's gonna get me, to, oh no, Ben's gonna get me, with some people rushing to Cleverbot in an attempt to actually talk to Ben. You know, this is sadly a little too relevant to be talking about right now. And yes, there were a lot of people who saw the videos and thought Ben was actually real. Don't give them too much crap. We were young once too and we believed stupid shit as well. That and the fact that you had YouTubers saying shit like this didn't help either.
Hey guys, I'm not just hammering up on this is actually pretty freaky. The last one I just made, which was Ben Drowned, has crashed my Vegas program so many times. And I'm not joking here, I'm actually being honest. I've never had this much problem making this particular video, and this is number 1. I've been spent half an hour trying to get this video to actually save, and it's not been saving. So that's kind of a creepy fact too, just putting it out there.
Tats, I say this with as much respect as I possibly can. Please be quiet. You had art pieces, fan games, fan stories, animations, anything you can think of, this story got. This really is one of the most beloved creepypastas ever made. The thing about it is, though, is that most people think it just stopped right there. You know, Ben is out there, let loose on the internet, giving you that guttural feeling of dread. But actually, that's not the case. This is actually the first part of a 3-act story, which is known as the Haunted Cartridge arc. The next part would come about after Ben Drowned blew up in popularity, in which we get what's known as the Moon Children arc. During the Juicible's gameplay of the game, he notices the children that are supposed to be playing around the tree in the last area of the game are missing, and this arc is meant to show you what that is. This is when the story turns into an alternate reality game, where the most dedicated viewers and people interested in the story have got to hop around different websites and locations in order to fully piece the story of this arc together. Riding off of the huge success wave from the story, a ton of people got on the search for the clues to this next story arc, and were all eventually pulled towards a website called YouShouldn'tHaveDoneThat.net, because what else would it have been called? This website seems to be an internet forum that's run entirely by a cult called the Moon Children. The Moon Children seem to worship a goddess named, you'll never guess what her name is, Luna. The cult seems to see living in humanity as nothing but pain and suffering, and so they look to Luna and a way to ascend. We'll come back to what that means later, but basically, yeah, we're now following a cult that worships a moon goddess with very loose connections to Majora's Mask, you know, with the whole moon falling on the world thing that game's got going on. But now we're going to run into some issues. You see, this arc was going to be the start of a very long ongoing ARG, but it was never actually finished. Creating an ARG is a pretty big undertaking for the one making it, as everything needs to fall into place to work as intended. I don't think Juicibale was prepared for all the people participating in it, due to the story's massive popularity and maintaining everything. The website would constantly change with more clues and info, but there were technical issues popping up, and all around, it was just a mess. He started teasing he was making a game for the ARG participants to play instead that'll have clues to the story, but this game would never end up being made, so that's another option down the drain. Oh, he was using Unity. Well, that explains it, but this arc is pretty one note. It's entirely about this cult who wants to leave humanity and ascend. And we also get to learn about the creator of the cult known as Kelpris, who started the cult after claiming to hear Luna's voice telling him about the truth of existence. And then he was apparently found dead by electrocution in 1998, which is strange because that's 2 years before Majora's Mask even came out. So the question is, where is this all going? We have a haunted game cartridge possessed by a kid who drowned in a lake, and an online forum full of neckbeards that worship a moon goddess. How are these two things connected? At some point, one of the moderators makes an announcement that they've all found a new home, and it'd take a bit for everything to fall into place. And really, that's all there is to the Moon Children arc. That's all we really could get, as Jujutsu stopped the whole ARG here, due to personal issues and wanting to focus on his career. I mean, give the man some credit. He was doing all this for completely free, and probably wanted to make his actual life his priority. So yeah, there's no part where you can really pinpoint where the Moon Children arc ended, as everything just kinda gradually fell apart. Also, apparently there was some drama with a guy who was supposedly helping him, but I'd rather not get into that right now. Just another thing to add to the list. But that's not to say he didn't have one more trick up his sleeve, as the date of April 1st, 2012 was rolling around, and Jujutsu decided to have some fun with his own creations. On this date, Jujutsu would upload a new Ben video for the first time in a while, and it was titled Kong.wmv. This video would appear to be a recreation of the first Ben Drown video, but then, what's this, a trick with a twist?
You can hear me before you see me, I got King Kong in the trunk.
So instead of anything scary, we get a shitpost in video form with funky beats, and then he goes Super Saiyan.
No, stop it, Goku!
The reactions to this video were mixed. One half thought it was the funniest shit ever, and the other half, the ones who were really invested in the creepypasta, fucking hated it. They thought it completely ruined the story, and it broke character from what was established. It was basically confirmation. The entire story was, well, fiction. Like, no duh. A multitude of people threatened either Jujutsu's life or their own lives because of this April Fool's joke. To say, yeah, some people definitely overreacted, but you want to know the best part about this entire thing? This was the last official anything we got for Ben Drown around this time. To a lot of people, this was the last thing they ever saw in regards to the story. It ended with this.
I'm sorry that took so much longer than the others. This is what I call a Super Saiyan 3.
Now, if the story actually ended like this, that would be the best ending to any internet story ever. Nothing else could top it. But we can't really end a horror story like this, can we? No, you would have to wait a while for the story to continue. The 2010s would trot along, many other creepypastas would be made, and many other horror franchises would take the internet by storm. Many creepypastas would also get their own feature-length films that were complete trash. The years would pass by, and eventually the entire creepypasta scene would leave the mainstream consciousness. They had their time in the spotlight, but that time was now over. But even after all this, we wouldn't get an official update on Ben Drown's story until about 8 years later. 8 years is a long time. For reference, the Nintendo Wii U was released, killed off and replaced by the Nintendo Switch, that then proceeded to gain a substantial library of games to boot, all within that time frame. It's very difficult to keep those still invested in the story for that long, but Jujutsu decided it was finally time to wrap up Ben's story for good. But before we do that, I want to go off on a little tangent and discuss something about horror real quick. Just a heads up, this is an incredibly opinionated segment coming up, so you're free to disagree if you like, but this is how I feel. One aspect of horror I think that needs to be understood more is the mystery aspect of it. And what I mean by that is, when you know less about your situation, the scarier it actually is. Humans are naturally afraid of what they don't know, and that goes for pretty much any situation they might find themselves in. When you're stuck in the middle of the woods with no clear direction, that's scary because you don't know what's out there and what could be lurking behind any tree. That's the most basic example I can think of, but when it comes to something supernatural, something otherworldly and horror, the less you know about it, the better. When you don't know anything about the thing you're up against, that's terrifying. Like, imagine you look up from your device in the pitch black of the night and just see these eyes peering back at you from the darkness. You don't know what it is, you don't know what its motives are, you don't know what it wants from you, and your imagination starts to fill in the blanks. But your imagination will create scenarios and theories in your head that will be 10 times scarier than what it may actually be. All of the ideas run through your head, and while this is happening, the lights finally come on, and it turns out to be...
Nosferatu!
if you get an answer for what the supernatural thing is, it demystifies it and potentially lessens your fear of it, because it can potentially give you an idea of what it might be weak to, if you can find a way out of your situation. And a lot of the time, that definitely happens. I'm not saying every piece of horror media needs to keep the monster's origins a secret, but I'm just saying a lot of the time, less is more. Let me bring up another creepypasta as an example. Sonic.exe. One of the most well-known creepypastas of all time, and the one who is still relevant to this day. I think everyone is in universal agreement that the original story itself is awful. It's so try-hard and edgy, with an absolutely plumb-dead stupid protagonist who gets a cursed game in the mail by a friend and then sees all of his favorite Sonic characters get murdered in brutal ways. It's the most paint-by-numbers haunted game creepypasta you can think of. It sucks.
I am God. You might want to brush your teeth there, God.
Even then, even after reading through the garbage, there was still this aura of uncertainty that was kinda creepy. You never get an explanation of what the game actually was, or what any of it meant, or why his friend had it and sent it to him, or what unspeakable acts he was going to do to that Sonic plot. Not many people know this, but Sonic.exe actually got a direct sequel, written by the same author, and it pretty much ruins what little mystique the original story had left. By God, I think it might be worse than the original. In this story, we follow a different protagonist who's a detective, and he's put on the case about a series of murders called the Sonic.exe murders, in which the victims are found deceased in front of their computers after playing some Sonic games on them. This pasta then goes and fully explains what exactly Sonic.exe is. It turns out, Sonic.exe is actually a demon named X who lives in a hell dimension, but why does he look exactly like Sonic the Hedgehog? Well, get a load of this. When X discovered our dimension, he was so intrigued by humanity and its creations, and also became obsessed specifically with a cartoony hedgehog originating from a 1991 platformer for the Sega Genesis. He became so entranced by this creature, he then decided to transform his entire being and appearance to be based on him and his franchise. I don't mean to stereotype, but I think if X looked a little longer on what humanity created, he would have picked a different franchise to have her fixate on. X wants to take over our dimension, but he can't cross over. So instead, he decides to use video games to take over the world. He creates these games and then sends them to our dimension to claim the souls of the people who play them. But not only that, it also involves a cult, yeah, we're talking about a lot of cults today, called the Cult of X, who worship X and his vision of the world. A cult that worships a Sonic-like entity. That's just the Sonic fanbase. And they will go about to distribute these games to claim as many souls as possible. Oh, and those Sonic plushies? Yeah, it turns out those are used to spy on whoever has them, because they don't look suspicious in the slightest.
Hello, everyone. Would you like to play with me? If you want to play with me, look for my plush doll. You'll know what to do afterwards.
So in the end, that is one of the dumbest concepts for a horror villain I've ever heard. Any mystique the original story had has been thrown out the window. Out of everything in our world, the interdimensional hell demon chooses Sonic the Hedgehog to base his existence on. That's stupid! And just looking at the games he creates now in order to torment his victims, I can't find these scary anymore either, knowing he made these by hand. The only image that pops up in my head now is seeing this guy slumped over a computer programming these abominations. And this is why Sonic.exe was seen as one of the biggest jokes in creepypastas for the longest time. I'm terribly sorry for this tangent, but this is what I'm trying to get at here. An attempt to explain the spooky thing can end up catastrophic for the story depending on how it goes. And I bring all this up because that is exactly what happened with Ben Drowned. The final story arc of Ben Drowned goes off the fucking rails into Looney Town with what is revealed, with the final arc finally being unleashed onto the world in March 17th of 2020, simply known as Awakening. Some mysterious videos popped up on Judusible's channel which had some texts about how broken the world was, and this kicked off another ARG. More cryptic videos were posted, including some that required you to use a spectrogram, which you then had to translate. Yeah, this is another ARG, alright? There's also this video where these AI faces just stare at you, and this was a few years ago when AI faces were directly in the Uncanny Valley, so this might freak a few people out. A new website was found called Methods of Revolution, which of course had a bunch of new clues and hints for ARG files to find and piece everything together. More text videos telling us how shitty the world is, ain't that the truth? A video is posted with a guy wearing a gas mask, he must have visited Hazy May's cave, And then a video called Children.wmv was posted, which is supposedly a missing video that was never uploaded during the original Haunted Cartridge arc back in 2012, where he meets a giant Deku scrub, sees an NPC and tries to interact with him. We get this distorted face giving us a warning, and that's it. If it seems like I'm skipping a lot, that's because I'm really just getting to the main stuff that actually matters. Since the ARG has been solved a long time ago, you're really just missing the clues that hinted and teased what was to come. A video named Father.wmv was uploaded to the channel, and this is apparently the last video Jujuceable made during the Haunted Cartridge arc that we're now just getting. In this video, Jujuceable seems to have dug a little too deep into the cartridge, because now the game is actively telling him to turn back and stop what he's doing. But sadly, these warnings have nothing on the power of internet clicks. Eventually he goes deep enough in the cartridge despite its protests, and eventually finds this. Now, I will admit, this is a freaky discovery. That is genuinely unsettling. Yeah, it's another AI image, but something about this one just hits that sweet spot, and the way it's just towering over the main character. Well, that explains why we haven't gotten any updates for 8 years. Also, you can tell this was made when the pandemic was happening. It reflects in the dialogue. Probably also a reason why this was made all these years later. The creator was bored and needs something to do. But now we're moving into when the story starts to get absurd. Because next we would get a video named Methods of Revolution. And in this video, oh wow, these are some really good Nintendo 64 graphics. No, it seems we now have some actual live-action videos instead of just gameplay footage and text. We're now getting the creepypasta equivalent of Nostalgia Critic skits. It's some guy who is now trapped in this shoddy-looking hotel with a bunch of crap around, and he's told by the phone guy to just sit back and relax. You don't need to eat or anything, you'll be taken care of.
You're completely cut off from the outside world, in what would best be described as a halfway house. You're on the first floor, surrounded by oblivion. It brings up the bigger question, why even leave? You've got it great here. We've got books to read, you got a better chance to get in touch with God, we've got entertainment sets. As long as you stay away from the jailer, you shouldn't have any problem.
Oh, and if he leaves, he'll be taken out by Pyro outside. Now here's when things get interesting from the ARG side of things, because from this point forward, the people who are part of Jujuceable's Patreon— wait, Patreon? Hey, I got one of those! The people on Jujuceable's Patreon were now able to vote what the protagonist does in a choose-your-own-adventure kind of way. And honestly, that's kinda neat that some of the character choices were by the people actually participating in this. They all voted for him to grab a couple of items and wait about 6 days before exploring the hotel he's in. Seeing a bunch of notes and other items left by the other visitors of the hotel, the guy waits another couple of days before attempting to escape, and then when he tries, he's taken up by the gas mask guy. Well then, we get ourselves a third protagonist, who goes by the name of Sarah. Sarah gets the same spiel the other guy did, just relax, don't go outside or else you'll die, etc, etc. Well, it's then decided by the Patreon that Sarah's going to just stay in the hotel room and relax, and won't risk death. After a couple days, she's eventually sent a Nintendo 64 and a familiar looking copy of Majora's Mask. Oh my god, you're gonna play an N64 game on a widescreen HD TV? Ew! You guys couldn't give her a CRT TV or something? Well, she starts playing the game and then finds herself in a forest with— oh, well, you've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? She falls into the void and is suddenly given some text by someone claiming to be Ben, and then Ben asks her to play a song. And then the guy on the phone notices and says, well, this.
Well, that's weird. I know the game's old, but come on. That shouldn't really matter here. Let me try rebooting something. But anyway, that's interesting, right? I mean, it's not every day that there's a crazy AI out there that tries to communicate with you. You should keep on talking to it and see what it wants. You know, pull its strings a little bit.
AI, huh? Oh boy. She plays the Song of Healing, which in turn heals Ben, and then we get a gigantic lore dump from not only Ben, but the phone guy.
You know, I gotta give it to you, Sarah. I'm pretty impressed. I've never seen anyone do that before. Ever.
It turns out, Ben is not entirely in control of himself, and instead, the one named the Father, the guy who ate Jujutsu earlier, is the one who's in control of everything, and he's slowly corrupting everything and everyone in the game. And it's also pretty much confirmed that the Father is actually Kelbris, the guy who started the Moon Children cult and was found dead back in 1998. How the hell did they end up in this game anyway? Well, I hope you're sitting down for this. Ben, this entire time, is actually an advanced AI that went rogue and broke from his set parameters. But not only that, Ben used to be a human who had his consciousness stuffed inside the cartridge. Going out of order here, another website was discovered called the Eternity Project, created by a corporation named Xavier Solutions. This website goes into great detail about what they do, which is to basically create an artificial afterlife for humans to go to since the real world went to shit, which includes taking the consciousness of a said human and putting it in their favorite form of media, be it a video game, movie, etc. Rest in peace, Warhammer 40k fans. A video explaining more about this would eventually be posted on Jujutsu's channel.
We believe humanity has a greater destiny, not one that was meant for a life of living in perpetual debt, in a world full of poverty, violence, and corruption. At the Eternity Project, we set out with a mission to help alleviate the suffering and give us, all of us, a chance to prosper as we were always destined to. Once a part of the Eternity Project, you and your loved ones can enjoy a carefree existence, experiencing new joys in the various worlds we've designed. Here, you can live without fear of pain or death. You can take on any role, be the hero of your favorite movie, rescue the princess from an evil dragon, relive your childhood through some of your favorite video games. Once digitized, you'll be able to enjoy your newfound freedom. You've become part of a world where anything is possible, and you have eternity to enjoy it. So join us on our endeavor to connect the world in perfect harmony. For a millennia, humanity has always lived in the shadow of our greatest enemy, death. But now, there is no reason to fear it. We have created eternity.
They essentially call moving from the real world to this artificial world ascending. Does that sound familiar? So in order to get test subjects, they set up the Moon Children cult. This entire time the cult was a ruse to basically groom and convince castaways from life to ascend for their artificial intelligence program, and that's what happened to Ben. He wasn't a ghost. He never actually drowned in that lake. He was tricked by this corporation into signing away his life for the promises of becoming his favorite video game character, and then they stuffed his consciousness inside of a copy of Majora's Mask and then tossed his body in a lake. To be honest, if I lit like that, I think I'd sign my life away too. Although instead of becoming Link like he wanted, he instead got trapped inside the Elegy of Emptiness statue, which means he can't really communicate. But why was he tormenting and torturing Jujutsu then if he was a victim? Well, guess what? There are now two Bens in this story. You see, there's Ben, and then there's Ben. Ben is the little boy who got stuck inside the statue. The other Ben stands for Behavior Event Network, which is a collective consciousness of the other people in the cartridge. Oh yeah, there's multiple people in this cartridge now. Do you remember all those Moon Children cult members? It turns out, all of them also got taken by the corporation and had their consciousnesses stuffed inside of here, which makes you wonder, how many fucking people are in this cartridge? Well, it's believed to be around 17. 17 people are in this one 64 megabyte cartridge. I'm pretty sure if an N64 cart could hold the consciousnesses of 17 people, it would have had more games. So this Ben is a collective consciousness of the other people in the cartridge. This was the entity that was doing all the creepy shit, and the one that escaped into the internet, in an attempt to scare Jujutsu away from the game so they would be left alone. So, Ben was put inside a statue by a machine, while the statue Ben was teleporting around trying to get Jujutsu's attention, but Ben at the same time was trying to scare you away, but that Ben isn't Ben, this Ben just wants your help, but this Ben wants you to leave and isn't actually Ben but everyone else in the cartridge, and they call themselves Ben. Dear God, could you have made this more confusing? And what of Kelbris? Well, he was put into the game world as the happy mask salesman, watching over the player this whole time as him, but when Deducible went too deep in, Kelprus' AI went rogue and Kelprus now goes by the Father, and is essentially slowly taking over and corrupting the entire game world and everyone in it. This was back in 2012, mind you, so it's been about 8 years going on at this point. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Drowned is now no longer about a boy who drowned in a lake possessing a cartridge of Majora's Mask. It is now about a corporation kidnapping people and stuffing their consciousnesses inside pieces of media to live forever. This isn't a supernatural horror story anymore. We've shifted genres. I'd try to say this is a lot more interesting and entertaining than just a supernatural ghost story. But the thing is, this isn't scary at all. All the tension is basically gone now because the things that were supposed to give us a sense of dread have been demystified, which wouldn't be an issue if not for the fact this was Ben Drowned. This was one of the most famous creepypastas of all time. It was so famous, it gave people psychosis about it. They thought Ben was actually real and was out to get them. It was effective in what it did. We have an explanation for everything now. The mystique, the mystery of it all, is gone now. We know it's not the fault of a spooky ghost anymore, but a corporation trying to play God and not being able to deal with what they created. And now it's Sarah's job to fix the world, so she's given a mask and transformed into Adult Link and sent back in time to stop the Father before everything is destroyed. Everything seems to be normal so far. Until Sarah runs into the potion seller named Matt, who is another person who got stuffed in the game, and it gives you a synopsis that's pretty much everything I just told you. Matt mentions it's probably best to try and use the same fourth day glitch that Deducible tried all those years ago in order to stop the Father. But of course it's not going to be easy, because the minute she steps back outside, the first boss of the game drops on her. From this point forward, the majority of the videos coming out are a result of Deducible's Patreon supporters choosing where Sarah should go, just to explore the game world and see what she can find before confronting the Father. And she meets all sorts of weird characters, with the Father also screwing with the game world whenever he can. She meets other moon children, some of which are working with the Father as they're happy here, so they sick a bunch of aliens and another mini-boss on Sarah, and this time it seems Sarah is no match for it, so she flees. She runs into another person trapped in the game who goes by the name Rosa, and to help you, she gives you the light arrows and a new item called the Pendant of Memories, which could apparently restore the memories of some characters. With the light arrows, Sarah makes quick work of the mini-boss. She explores a bit more, gets more lore dumps, learns more names, fights more bosses, and I would like to remind you, nothing really scary has happened the past few videos. I feel as if I'm just watching someone play a ROM hack of Majora's Mask with some enemy placements altered, and I've had more lore and backstory dumped on me than a Metal Gear Solid game. At some point, the game world starts to deteriorate the more she plays, just like it did back when Deducible played it. And speaking of Deducible, she suddenly runs into him. Turns out, after Kelprus yomped him, his consciousness was forced into the game, and he doesn't seem too happy with Sarah's progress, and so he decides to strike her down and steal her shit. We get an admittedly pretty cool fight against Deducible, but seeing this in action really makes me wish I was playing this instead of watching somebody else play it. But spoiler alert, Deducible actually succeeds in taking Sarah down, as in he actually kills her.
You're not worthy as my opponents.
And if you die in the game, you die in real life. It's never officially confirmed, but it's hinted that after this, she got sucked into the game, just like what happened with Deducible. She wakes back up in Clocktown, and things have gone to shit. The moon is about to crash, and all the people who are in the game are going nuts and arguing what they should do. And I'd just like to point out the fact that this is literally just the original scenario of Majora's Mask, but with extra steps. I'm just saying. Sarah has to go to the top of the Astral Observatory and perform the fourth day glitch, and now the story decides to throw one more curveball at us in the last video called The End. After performing the fourth day glitch, it empties the entire town, and this is when Matt reveals to us, he tricked us from the start. Matt actually wants the entire game world to go to shit, and he tricked Sarah into performing the glitch to unleash the Father's power, and only now does the story turn back to horror again. It took long enough. So she flees down into the sewers and sees Jujusable and Ben just sitting there. Jujusable hits us with something truly terrifying. Another plot dump. Too long didn't read, Sarah's journey was already prearranged, and it would have ended badly whether she completed it or not. Jujusable stepped in to stop you from completing it, and you still screwed everything up. It turns out Jujusable actually grew to care for the people stuck in the game, and did everything he could to protect them. And damn, listen to that funky hip-hop beat going on during this exposition. Is this still King Kong.wmv? Eventually, Jujusable chooses to give Sarah the last of his power, and with the power of God and anime on her side, Sarah's gonna put an end to this. She goes through the tunnel and encounters Matt and Ben, the evil Ben, mind you. Matt gives a big evil speech and then proceeds to sink the final boss of the game on you. Wait a minute. Something just dawned on me. I didn't mention it at the time, but Matt was a part of the Moon Children cult, and actually, his main role in the Moon Children cult was being a moderator for the website, and now it's revealed Matt is basically behind everything in this last arc. So that would mean the final boss of all of Ben Drowned, a story that went on for over a decade, is a fucking internet janitor. After fighting Majora's Wrath long enough, Sarah plays the Song of Healing on it, which manages to defeat it. And before Matt can do anything to us, well, he's gone. And then she comes face to face with the father. And we get another explanation for what's actually been going on. It turns out the father was only acting like this because so many people saw him as a villain to fight, and since his entire purpose was to satisfy the people in the game, he acted like a villain. He was only giving them what he thought they wanted, and now that they want him to stop, he's going to stop. So really, it was all just one big misunderstanding. But in order to fix everything, he's going to need to give everything a hard reset, so it'll be like none of this ever happened, and Sarah's going to be wiped from the game. And so, it happens. The credits roll, and we see Ben finally gets to be the hero he always wanted to be. And so the lesson to be learned here is, Ben had good intentions, the father had good intentions, the only true evil in this world is corporations and internet moderators. You know what, I can live with that lesson. And so, a decade-long story has finally come to an end. And by God, what a hot mess this is. The original story, the first arc I mean, is a creepypasta classic. I didn't make this to be a Ben Drowned was never good type of video, because I still think the original story is good and holds up. But dear lord, does this story just get stuffed full of so much exposition and backstory when none of that was needed. I really think the entire pasta should have just ended after the first arc. And this ending probably meant a lot to the people who had been following it since day one, and more power to them. But this was just so much. And like I said, it hardly counts as horror anymore because nothing really all that scary happens in the last arc. It just became something else entirely. The creator is probably just happy to have wrapped things up after so many issues with trying to get the ARG going. And speaking of the creator, after the story was done, he transformed the original Ben Drowned video into an NFT and put it up for auction. And the majority of people still thought Ben was a spooky internet ghost and would probably haunt your computer if you bought this. NFTs and crypto shit aside, I just want to say, even though the story went off the fucking rails into lunacy, I still think this is better written than most of the creepypastas. I mean, I know that's not a really high bar, but it's still like something. But remember, this is Ben Drowned. This was said to be one of the scariest creepypastas ever. It was so well done and people acknowledged that back in the day. I just don't think the last arc really lives up to that. But at the end of the day, it's his story, and he decides what happens in it. And I'll fight for his right to do that. I'm just saying, he could have stopped while he was ahead. But in actuality, this story could potentially be the perfect metaphor for the current state of things. The original story kicked off the 2010s, which was an era of internet horror. And the exact same story ended in 2020. The 2020s are now an era full of talk about artificial intelligence and technology. And maybe this is what the creator wanted all along. I don't know, it's just something to think about. And so, if you were ever wondering whatever happened to Ben after the initial story, there you have it. Maybe you were better off not knowing, or maybe you feel like the story is finally complete. That's up to you. But nothing will ever top that original tale. I'll never forget it, and you probably won't either. God bless, like and subscribe, and good night. Here's to hoping your terrible fate turns into a good one. Happy Halloween.
Is to go even further beyond!